Producers, how are you guys doing today? In this video, I wanted to show you guys this technique that I use in Serum to create organic sounding synth sounds, because for the longest time I wasn't using any synths. I wasn't really doing much sound design, and I've just been using loops. And that's because most of the time when I make sounds in a synth, it just ends up sounding too digital and it doesn't sound organic sounding. And most music nowadays uses sample loops, and I've just been sampling a lot. But recently I found this technique that you can use to kind of get the best of both worlds, because by using a sample, because synths are still really cool. They still have a lot of abilities. The only downfall was that most of the time with synth wavetables, you're gonna get a very digital sounding sound. But in Serum, you can use a one shot, or a basically a sound of a note, and you can drag it in as a wavetable. So let's get this music box loop, and I'm gonna turn this into a realistic synth sound. And it's not gonna be like a contact library where it's like this super realistic instrument or anything like that, but it's gonna be a very organic sounding synth, and you can make some nice lush melodies. And my lush kit, which is for Serum, is kind of based off of that, off of getting a lush, realistic as possible smooth sound. Anyways, this is what this loop sounds like. So if we want to make a sound that sounds like this, we need to get a single note. So we can't use a chord or anything, and we once we find that single note, we can chop it and put it in. And in this loop, there's one right at the beginning, so we're just gonna isolate it. We're just gonna cut it out just like that and fade the end just a little bit. And then what I like to do, and what I make sure to do, is make sure that the note is a C before I consolidate it. So I'm gonna get a tuner, and as you can tell, this is an F, but we want it to be a C. So we're gonna transpose it down 5, and that will make it into a C. And the reason why is because once I put this in Serum, and once I'm playing my keyboard, when I press C, I want it to play a C. So, because if I was kept it at F, each time I would, my keyboard would start at F instead of C, which would be weird. Once we do that, we want to right click and consolidate, or you can hit Command J. And then what you do is, really you have two ways of making a realistic sound in Serum. One way is you have this sampler right here, and this is pretty common knowledge, and really what it's doing is just playing back the sample. And if you hit this keyboard button right here, you can play it across your keyboard. Let me make sure it's loud. And to make sure it's not looping like that, you hit this one shot button. But that's pretty basic knowledge. So we're just gonna mute that, and we're gonna use the oscillator, which is how you actually create a synth that sounds like this. So we're just gonna drag it, and I like to use this third option right here. And if we click on it, we can see a different perspective, and we have this wavetable. Now, as I drag through this wavetable, you guys can kind of hear the sound. So what we want to do is we want to automate that. So usually what I like to do is I'll get an envelope, and I'll put it on this wavetable right here. And if we want it to play all the way through, there's two ways we can do it. We can turn up the attack, and which is pretty decent. Or what I like to do is I like to flip it and make it go the other direction and turn down the sustain. That way, as you can tell, this is the peak of the envelope. And if we look at the blue line, the blue dot that goes across, you can kind of see the process of the envelope. And what's going to happen is it's going to start at the top now, which is the beginning. And then it's going to go all the way down back to the initial point. And the decay is the speed. Alright. Now we have a synth that sounds like a music box. And unfortunately, at the end, it gets stuck. Honestly, it doesn't sound too bad, but if you want to make it continue to have movement, what you do is you add an LFO to the wavetable, which is just a moving, a looped envelope. And then you want to select a little range here. And I turn up the rise, which is going to, actually, first of all, turn off the BPM. That way you can control the speed more precisely. And then, like I said, I turn up the rise, which is how long it takes for the envelope, the LFO to set in, because we don't want it to automatically start moving. We want it only start moving towards the end. And then what we can do is we can select a more specific range of movement. And you can just look at this blue dot right here to see what the range of motion is. Alright, so now that we have a decent range of motion, in my opinion, I think this should be okay. And we can just listen to this full sound. Little bit of scratchiness to it, so I guess we're just not going to use that LFO. We're just going to let it stay at the end. And then usually I'll layer it with the original sample. Change the pitch. Feels like the sample is a little bit off key, so let me check. So that's playing a C and this is playing a C as well. Okay, so we're good. And then we can shape this sound however we want with the volume envelope. We can add more voices and whatnot. And yeah, I think that's gonna be about it for this sound. I've made a lot of different types of sounds using this technique. You can make string sounds, brass sounds, really almost any type of sound, as long as you have a sample of one single note and you just drag it into the wavetable. And you can also layer it with the noise, as you can tell, which is just a regular sampler. And you just get these really odd, realistic, organic sounds in Serum. And I'm sure this will work with any other type of wavetable synth that allows you to use samples and make your own wavetables. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. Usually I'll just add effects as well if I feel like the sound needs effects. Like I could add some reverb for this one, or delay. So yeah, go ahead and leave a like if you enjoyed, and let me know in the comments what you thought of this technique and if you'll be using it. And I will see you guys in another video. Peace.